The air in the courtroom smelled like floor wax and old money. It was a suffocating scent, the kind that makes you feel small, the kind that reminds you that justice usually belongs to the people who can afford the most expensive suits. And today, the most expensive suit in the room belonged to the man standing 20 feet away from me. My father, Senator Marcus Vance. He didn't look like a man who was suing his own daughter. He looked like he was posing for a campaign poster. His silver hair was perfectly coiffed. His navy blue suit was tailored to hide the slight paunch of middle age, and his face wore that practiced expression of solemn concern he usually saved for natural disasters or tax hikes. He raised a manicured hand and pointed a finger directly at my face.
The gesture was theatrical, designed for the few reporters sitting in the back row. "Your Honor," Marcus boomed, his voice filling the room with that rich, baritone confidence that had won him 3 elections. "This isn't just about the money. God knows I don't need my mother's money. This is about principle. This girl, this woman sitting right there, she only knows how to waste what she doesn't deserve. She manipulated a senile old woman to steal a legacy that belongs to this family's future." I sat perfectly still. My spine was pressed so hard against the wooden back of the defendant's chair that it hurt, but I didn't flinch. I didn't look down. I kept my eyes locked on his. "She is a parasite," he continued, turning to the judge with a look of pained, fatherly disappointment. "I tried to raise her right, but she has always been broken, greedy, and now she has looted the family estate." I felt the eyes of the room burning into me. My stepmother, Elena, was sitting behind him, dabbing at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. My younger half-brother, Julian, was slumped next to her, checking his watch, looking bored, as if destroying my life was just an inconvenience to his afternoon schedule. Then I looked at the judge, Judge Thorne. Thorne wasn't just a judge. He was Marcus's golf partner. I had seen photos of them clinking scotch glasses at the country club on my father's social media. Thorne nodded slowly as my father spoke, a look of sympathetic understanding on his face. It was the nod of a man who had already made up his mind before the gavel even banged to open the session. "We are asking," Marcus's lawyer, a shark named Amy Richards, cut in smoothly, "that the court overturn the current will due to undue influence and revert the estate to the natural heir, Senator Vance. And given Miss Vance's history of instability, we ask that her assets be frozen immediately." Instability. That was a laugh. I was a 32-year-old landscape architect with my own firm. I paid my taxes early. I had a credit score of 800. I was the one who remembered birthdays. I was the one who showed up. But in this room, facts didn't seem to matter. In this room, the narrative was being written by the man with the microphone. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling slightly. Just a tremor in the fingers. I clenched them into fists to stop it. In my right hand, hidden beneath the table, I was gripping a simple silver ballpoint pen. It wasn't just a pen. It was my anchor. "Ms. Vance," Judge Thorne's voice dripped with condescension, "do you have anything to say before we proceed with the opening statements?" I took a deep breath. The air still smelled like wax and injustice, but beneath that, I could smell something else. The faint, lingering scent of my grandmother's lavender perfume on the scarf I was wearing. "I am here to ensure my grandmother's voice is heard, Your Honor," I said. My voice was quieter than my father's, but it didn't shake. Not the version of her that Senator Vance invented for his campaign speeches. "The real her." Marcus let out a short, derisive laugh. "See? She thinks she speaks for the dead. It's delusional." The judge smirked. It was a small, tight movement of his lips, but I saw it. He looked at Marcus, then back at me, and his eyes said everything I needed to know. "You don't stand a chance, little girl." But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know about the receipts. They didn't know about the nights I spent awake while they were sleeping. They thought they were hunting a rabbit, but they had cornered a wolf who was just waiting for the right moment to bite back. I gripped the pen tighter. Just wait, I told myself. Let them stack their lies as high as they want. It just means the fall will be harder. The courtroom faded.
The polished wood and the judge's smirk dissolved into the sterile white walls of a hospice room. We need to go back. You need to understand why my father's words, calling me a parasite, cut so deep. You need to see the reality that existed 6 months before the gavel banged. The reality was the smell of rubbing alcohol and old flowers. The reality was the rhythmic beeping of an oxygen monitor that had become the soundtrack of my life for 5 years. My grandmother, Martha, was the iron matriarch of the family. She had built the family fortune from a single hardware store into a real estate empire. But in the end, cancer doesn't care about your portfolio. It strips you down to the bone. For the last 5 years, I was the one stripping down with her. Fiona. Grandma's voice was a rasp, barely a whisper. She was trying to lift her hand to reach the glass of water. I've got it, Grandma. Here. I guided the straw to her lips. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. I had a client presentation at 9 a.m. for a massive park project, but I was here, in the armchair that had permanently imprinted itself on my back. Where was Marcus? Has Marcus called? Grandma asked, her eyes fluttering open. They were cloudy now, but they still held that sharp intelligence. I hesitated. I hated lying to her, but I hated hurting her more. He called earlier, Grandma. You were sleeping. He said he's busy with the bill on infrastructure, but he sends his love. It was a lie. Marcus hadn't called in 3 weeks. He was in D.C. Or maybe on a golf trip in Florida. I knew because I followed his campaign Instagram. He was posting photos of himself shaking hands with veterans, captioning them, "Family is everything." The hypocrisy tasted like bile in my throat. I was the one changing the adult diapers. I was the one managing the nurses. I was the one holding the bucket when the chemo made her sick. I was the one paying the utility bills for her estate because Marcus couldn't access his trust funds right now due to some vague audit. I was the ATM. I was the nurse. I was the daughter he was supposed to be. One afternoon, about a month before the end, Grandma Martha had a moment of intense clarity. The morphine fog lifted, and she sat up straighter than she had in weeks. "Fiona, bring me the black box," she commanded. I went to the closet and pulled down the heavy steel lockbox she kept hidden under her blankets. She fumbled with the key, her hands shaking, until I helped her turn it. Inside, there wasn't cash. There was a silver pocket watch, my grandfather's, and a thick envelope. "Listen to me," she said, grabbing my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "You are the only one who is really here. The only one." "Grandma, don't talk like that. They love you. They're just..." "Busy?" she scoffed. "No. They are vultures, Fiona. They are circling. I see them." She pressed the watch into my hand. "Your grandfather used to tell me, time is the only thing you can't win back, Martha. Don't waste it waiting for people who already chose to leave." I wasted too much time waiting for Marcus to be a good son. I don't want you to waste your time waiting for him to be a good father. I looked at the watch. It was cool and heavy in my palm. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because when I die, the war will start," she whispered. "They will come for the house. They will come for the accounts. Marcus needs money. I don't know for what, but I can smell the desperation on him when he does visit. He looks at me like he's calculating my expiration date." She tapped the envelope. "This is the key to the safe deposit box at the bank. The real will is in there, and the evidence." "Evidence?" "Just keep it," she said, her energy fading as she sank back into the pillows. "You are the provider, Fiona. You always have been. But you need to stop providing for them and start protecting yourself. Promise me." "I promise," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. I didn't realize then how prophetic her words were. I thought she was just being paranoid, the medication talking. I didn't want to believe that my father, a respected senator, a man who preached family values to millions of voters, was actually looking at his dying mother and seeing a payday. But as I wiped her forehead with a cool cloth, watching her chest rise and fall, I felt a shift inside me. The exhaustion was still there, but something else was growing underneath it. a hardness. I wasn't just a granddaughter anymore. I was a witness. And as Grandma said, time was running out. I pulled out my phone and started documenting everything. Every missed call from my dad, every text from my brother Julian asking for money while I was at the pharmacy picking up morphine. Hey sis, need $2,000 for rent. Dad said to ask you. Grandma won't need it anyway, right? She's pretty out of it. I took a screenshot. Click. That screenshot was the first brick in the wall I was building, a wall to keep the monsters out. It rained on the day of the funeral. Of course it did. It was a cliché, but the sky seemed to be the only thing mourning Martha Vance properly. The cemetery was filled with black umbrellas and cameras. Marcus had turned his mother's burial into a media event. He stood at the head of the grave, looking devastatingly handsome in a black trench coat, holding a single red rose. My mother, he choked out during the eulogy, pausing for dramatic effect as a camera shutter clicked, was the bedrock of this community. She taught me everything I know about sacrifice. I stood 10 feet away, water soaking into my heels, shivering. I wanted to scream. Sacrifice? You missed her last 3 birthdays. You were in Cabo when she took her last breath. But I stayed silent. That was my role. The silent, supportive daughter. My stepmother, Elena, stood next to me. She leaned in, her voice low and sharp like a razor blade. Fix your hair, Fiona. You look like a drowned rat. The press is taking photos. I'm mourning, Elena, I whispered back. Mourn prettier, she hissed. Then there was Julian, my 28-year-old half-brother, the golden child. He was swaying slightly, the smell of bourbon radiating off him. He wasn't crying. He was texting. Dude, Julian whispered to me while the priest was blessing the coffin. Did Grandma leave the vintage Jaguar? I think I'm gonna sell it and get a Tesla. I felt my stomach churn. Julian, shut up. We are burying her. Relax, Vi. She's dead. She doesn't care about cars anymore. The service ended, and the crowd moved toward the reception tent. I hung back, wanting a moment alone with the coffin. As I stood there, touching the cold wood, I heard voices from behind a large oak tree nearby. It was Marcus. He was on the phone. He thought he was alone. Yes, I know the deadline is Friday, Marcus was saying, his voice devoid of the grief he had just performed. It was tight, angry.
Look, the old bat finally kicked it. The probate should be fast. I have a judge in my pocket. I'll have the liquidity to cover the margin call by next week. I froze. Margin call? No, Marcus snapped into the phone. Don't touch the offshore account. I'll sell the house first. It's prime real estate. The girl, Fiona? Don't worry about her. She's soft. She's a doormat. I'll throw her a few crumbs. Maybe let her keep some jewelry. She worships me. She won't fight. She's a doormat. She worships me. Something inside my chest made a sound. It was a sharp, cracking sound, like a dry branch snapping under a heavy boot. For 32 years, I had chased his approval. I had gotten straight A's, built a successful business, cared for his mother, loaned money to his screw-up son, all hoping that one day Marcus Vance would look at me and say, "I'm proud of you." But standing there in the mud, listening to him barter my grandmother's legacy to cover his gambling debts, the need for his love evaporated. It just vanished. It was replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I stopped crying. I reached into my purse and pulled out a tissue, wiping my face dry. I fixed my hair, just like Elena wanted. But I didn't do it for the cameras. I did it because a soldier needs to be in uniform. I walked out from behind the tree. Marcus turned, startled, phone still to his ear. For a split second, he looked terrified. Then he put on the mask. "Fiona, darling." I was just... "Save it, Marcus," I said. I didn't call him Dad. He blinked. "Excuse me?" I said save it. And by the way, I stepped closer, my heels sinking into the soft earth, but my posture iron straight. I'm not a doormat, and I'm definitely not soft. I walked past him toward the waiting limo.
I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for the toughest estate attorney in the city, the one Grandma had whispered to me weeks ago. "This is Fiona Vance," I said into the phone as I watched my father scowl in the rain. "I need to schedule a meeting, immediately. It's about a war." This was the snap, the moment the daughter died and the adversary was born. The reading of the will took place 3 days later in the mahogany-paneled office of Mr.
Henderson, Grandma's longtime lawyer. Marcus, Elena, and Julian sat on one side of the conference table. They looked like they were waiting for a buffet to open. I sat alone on the other side. Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses and broke the seal on the envelope. "Martha Vance was of sound mind and body when she updated this testament 6 months ago," he began. Marcus leaned forward, a greedy glint in his eyes. "Get to the numbers, Henderson." "Very well. To my son, Marcus Vance, I leave my collection of antique political biographies in hopes that he might one day learn what true service means." Silence. Marcus's face turned purple.
"Is that a joke?" "To my grandson Julian," Henderson continued, ignoring the interruption, "I leave the sum of $5,000 on the condition that he attends a financial literacy course." Julian slammed his hand on the table. $5,000? That doesn't even cover my credit card bill for last month. "And," Henderson raised his voice, "to my granddaughter Fiona Vance, who stood by me when the lights dimmed, I leave the remainder of my estate, the family home, the investment portfolio, the real estate holdings, and all personal effects. Total estimated value, $12 million. The room exploded. Marcus stood up so fast his chair tipped over. "That witch! She can't do that. She was out of her mind. Fiona brainwashed her." He turned to me, his eyes bulging. "You little snake."
"You poisoned her against me. You sat there by her bed whispering lies, didn't you?" I remained seated, crossing my legs calmly. "I sat by her bed holding her hand, Marcus. Something you might have known if you were ever there. I am a United States Senator," he screamed. "I have responsibilities. I don't have time to change bedpans." "And that," I said quietly, "is exactly why you didn't get the money." Marcus leaned over the table, his face inches from mine. Spittle flew from his lips. "You listen to me. You are going to sign over that estate to me, today, or I will bury you. I will drag your name through the mud so deep you'll never get a client again. I will paint you as a predator who preyed on a dying woman. Do it," I challenged. "Sue me." And he did. 7 days later, a process server handed me a thick envelope at my office. It was a lawsuit. Marcus Vance v. Fiona Vance. The allegations were sickening. He accused me of undue influence, claiming I had isolated Grandma, medicated her into a stupor, and forced her to sign a new will. He claimed I was mentally unstable and financially predatory. But the legal attack was just the beginning. The PR attack was worse. That night, I turned on the TV. There was Marcus on a primetime news segment. He looked sorrowful, a tear glistening in his eye. "It's a tragedy," he told the interviewer. "We love Fiona, but she's troubled. She took advantage of my mother's dementia. I'm only doing this to protect my mother's legacy, and frankly, to get Fiona the help she needs." The money doesn't matter to me. My phone started blowing up. Hate mail, cancellations from clients. People I had known for years were blocking me. The narrative was taking hold. The greedy daughter versus the noble public servant. I sat on my floor, surrounded by legal papers. I felt the panic rising. He had power. He had connections. He had the media. All I had was the truth. And in America, the truth is often just the first casualty of a good story. I looked at the silver watch Grandma gave me. Don't waste time waiting for people who chose to leave. I wasn't going to wait. I needed an army, or at least a general. I grabbed my laptop and typed in a name. Ben Sterling. He was an old-school litigator, known for 2 things. He hated politicians, and he never lost a case involving inheritance fraud. I dialed his number. It was late, but he answered. "Sterling," a gruff voice barked. "Mr. Sterling, my name is Fiona Vance. Senator Vance is trying to steal my grandmother's estate. He says I'm unstable. He says I'm a predator." There was a pause, then a sound like a match being struck. The senator, huh? Sterling grunted. I've been wanting to take a bite out about Teacock for 20 years. Be in my office at 8 a.m. and bring everything, every text, every email, every receipt. I have something better, I said, thinking of the safe deposit box key. What? I have the truth, I said. Truth is good, kid, Sterling chuckled darkly.
But in court, we prefer receipts. Ben Sterling's office looked less like a law firm and more like a library that had exploded. Stacks of paper towered on every surface. Ben himself was a wrinkled man in a rumpled suit, smelling of coffee and old tobacco, but his eyes were sharp as razors. We have a problem, Ben said, tossing a file onto the desk. The judge assigned to your case is James Thorne. I know, I said. He's my father's golf buddy. It's worse than that. Thorne is up for a federal appointment, and your father is on the committee that approves it. Thorne needs Marcus happy. This trial is going to be a kangaroo court. My heart sank. So it doesn't matter what evidence we have? They've already rigged the game? It matters, Ben said, leaning forward.
But we need a nuke. We need something that makes it impossible for Thorne to rule against us without ending his own career. We need dirt. I went home that night feeling a heavy dread. How was I supposed to find dirt on a man who had spent 30 years burying it? I was unlocking my apartment door when a figure stepped out of the shadows of the hallway. I gasped and dropped my keys, reaching for the pepper spray in my purse. Don't shoot, a voice whispered. A young man stepped into the light. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a hoodie pulled up. I recognized him. Elias. He used to be my father's legislative aide, the one who was always running behind Marcus carrying 3 phones.
Elias? What are you doing here? He fired me, Elias said, his voice trembling. 2 days ago. He blamed me for the leak about the infrastructure bill funds. It wasn't me. It was Julian. Julian spent the campaign funds on online gambling, and Marcus made me the scapegoat to protect his precious son. I unlocked the door and ushered him in. Why are you here, Elias? He sat on my couch, wringing his hands. I signed an NDA. As I talk, he sues me for everything I have. But I saw the news. I saw what he's doing to you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black USB drive. What is that? I asked. Marcus is paranoid, Elias explained. He records everything. Meetings, calls, even conversations in his car. He thinks it's insurance against his enemies. He kept the archives on a private server. I was the admin. He placed the drive on the coffee table. It looked like a harmless piece of plastic, but the air in the room seemed to get heavier around it. This is a backup, Elias whispered. He doesn't know I have it. There are folders in there going back 10 years. I don't know what's on all of them, but I know there's a folder labeled Family Matters. I stared at the drive. This was it. This was the weapon Grandma had prayed for. Why are you giving me this? I asked. You could go to jail. Elias looked up, his eyes hard. He ruined my reputation, Fiona. He destroyed my career to save Julian's skin. I don't want money. I just want to watch him burn. After Elias left, I called Ben. I have the nuke, I said. Bring it over, Ben replied. And Fiona, don't stop for red lights. We spent the next 48 hours in a small conference room, fueled by energy drinks and adrenaline. We plugged the drive into an air-gapped laptop. There were thousands of files. We need to filter, Ben said. Search for Mom, Will, Thorne, Estate. We listened. We listened to Marcus making backroom deals with contractors. We listened to him laughing about cutting funding for schools. But those were political crimes. We needed personal ones. Wait, I said, pausing a file dated 6 months ago. Look at the date, May 12th. What about it? That was Grandma's 80th birthday, I said, my voice tight. I threw her a party at the hospice. We waited for 4 hours for Marcus to show up. He never came. He told me his flight was grounded in Chicago due to a storm. I clicked play on the file. The audio crackled. It wasn't the sound of an airport. It was the sound of clinking glasses, jazz music, and laughter. Marcus's voice. So I told the old hag I was stuck in O'Hare. Can you believe it?
She's probably sitting there with a party hat on, drooling into her cake. Laughter. Cruel, raucous laughter. Another voice, Judge Thorne. You're terrible, Marcus. But seriously, how long until she kicks the bucket? I need you to focus on the appointment. Soon, James, soon. The doctors say any day now. Once she's gone, the assets are mine. I'll clear the debts, and we can get you that federal seat. Just make sure the probate goes smooth if that annoying daughter of mine tries anything. Consider it done. What are friends for? I ripped the headphones off. My hands were shaking so hard I knocked over my coffee. We got him, Ben whispered, a terrifying grin spreading across his face. We got them both. I didn't smile. I felt sick. My father wasn't just a bad dad. He was a monster. He had mocked his dying mother on her birthday while plotting with a judge to steal her legacy. This is it, I said, clutching the drive. This is the receipt. We can't just release this, Ben warned. If we leak it, they'll claim it's deepfake AI. We need to authenticate it, and we need to play it in a place where they can't run away. We play it in court. But Thorne will never allow it into evidence, I argued. Ben leaned back. That's why we have to trap him. We have to make him think he's won. We let them attack you, we let them get arrogant, and then we drop the bomb. The days leading up to the trial were a blur of preparation. While Ben worked on the legal strategy, I went into archivist mode. My father called me a waster. He said I didn't deserve anything. He didn't know that my superpower was my obsessive attention to detail. I turned my apartment into a war room. The floor was covered in timelines. The lie. Marcus claimed he paid for Grandma's care. The receipt. Bank statements from my personal savings account showing $8,000 a month going to the Sunset Hospice Care. Total, $145,000 over 2 years. The lie. Marcus claimed I isolated Grandma. The receipt. The visitor logs from the hospice. Fiona Vance, 412 visits. Marcus Vance, 6 visits. Julian Vance, 2 visits, both lasted under 10 minutes. The lie. Marcus claimed Grandma was mentally incompetent when she signed the will. The receipt. A video I took on my phone the day she signed it. In the video, Grandma is sitting up, solving the Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle in pen. She looks at the camera and says, Fiona, tell your father that integrity is a 9-letter word he should look up. I organized everything into binders. Red binders for financial lies, blue binders for medical lies, and the black binder, that was the audio transcript. The night before the trial, Sarah, my best friend and office manager, came over to help me prep. She looked at the piles of evidence. "Fi, this is insane," she said. "You have enough here to put him away." "That's the plan," I said, highlighting a line in the transcript. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked softly. "I mean, really? You're about to destroy your dad." I stopped. Was I okay? I looked at the photo of me and Dad from when I was 5. He was holding me on his shoulders. He looked happy. For years, I had clung to that photo as proof that he loved me. But then I looked at the transcript. Marcus. She's a prop. Voters love a single dad story. Once she's 18, she's on her own. He never loved me. He loved the demographic I represented. "I'm not destroying him, Sarah," I said, closing the binder. "He destroyed himself the moment he decided to betray his own mother. I'm just the mirror, and tomorrow I'm going to make him look at his reflection." Ben called me at 10 p.m. "Bad news," he said. "They just submitted a motion to exclude all digital recordings from evidence, claiming privacy violations." "Can they do that?" "Thorne can do whatever he wants," Ben said. "He's going to block the tape. I guarantee it." "So what do we do?" I felt panic rising again. "We pivot," Ben said. "We have to get Marcus to open the door himself. We have to get him on the stand, get him angry, get him to deny the specific conversation on the tape. Once he lies about it under oath, we can introduce the tape to impeach his testimony." It's a gamble. If he keeps his cool, the tape stays buried. "He won't keep his cool," I said. "I know how to break him." "How?" "I know what he's really afraid of," I said. "He's not afraid of jail. He's afraid of being laughed at." I hung up the phone. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, clutching the silver watch, listening to the ticking. Tick, tock.
Tick, tock. The time for waiting was over. The courtroom was packed. The press had smelled blood. Senator Sue's daughter for millions was a headline too juicy to ignore. Marcus walked in like a gladiator. He high-fived his lawyer, winked at the reporters, and shot me a look of pure pity. Julian was wearing a new suit, probably bought with another loan I'd eventually find out about. Judge Thorne banged the gavel.
Court is in session. Amy Richards, Marcus's shark lawyer, stood up for opening statements. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, pacing in front of the jury box, though this was a bench trial, so she was performing for the cameras. You will hear a story of a tragic decline, a grandmother losing her faculties, and a granddaughter who saw an opportunity. Fiona Vance took advantage of a confused, dying woman to cut out her own father, a dedicated public servant. She pointed at me. She is not a victim. She is a manipulator. I wrote in my notebook, liar. Then came the parade of witnesses. First, a doctor I had never seen before, Dr. Aris. Yes, Dr. Aris testified, consulting his notes. Mrs. Vance showed signs of advanced dementia. She would have been highly suggestible.
Ben stood up on cross-examination. Dr. Aris, did you ever actually examine Martha Vance? I reviewed her charts, the doctor stammered. So you never met her. You were hired by Senator Vance last week to review charts provided by Senator Vance. Objection, Richard shouted. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Thorne drawled, glaring at Ben. Watch your tone, counselor. Next came Julian. He took the stand, wiped away a fake tear, and looked at the judge with puppy dog eyes. Grandma always told me I was her favorite, Julian lied. She promised me the house. She said, Julian, you are the future of this family. Fiona was always jealous. She wouldn't let me visit. She blocked my number on Grandma's phone. I felt my blood boiling. I had blocked his number because he kept calling at 2 a.m. asking Grandma for gambling money. Ben stood up. Mr. Vance, isn't it true that on the dates you claim you were blocked, you were actually in Las Vegas? Objection, Richards yelled. Relevance. Sustained. Thorne ruled immediately. Mr. Sterling, stop harassing the witness. It was a massacre. Every time Ben tried to introduce facts, Thorne shut him down. Every time Marcus's side told a lie, Thorne nodded like it was gospel. Then came the low blow. Richard set up a projector. Your Honor, we have video evidence of the defendant's abusive behavior. They played a clip. It was grainy footage from a nanny cam in the hospice room. In the clip, I was yelling, Drink it! You have to drink it! Stop fighting me!
The courtroom gasped. It looked like I was force-feeding her. I jumped up. That's out of context. She was choking on her pills. I was trying to save her. Sit down, Miss Vance, Judge Thorne barked, slamming his gavel. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. I sank back into my chair, trembling. They had edited the video. They had cut the part where Grandma coughed up the pill and hugged me, crying, thanking me for helping her. Marcus turned to me. He mouthed one word. Monster. I looked at Ben. He looked grim. They're killing us, he whispered. Thorne is blocking everything. We need to tape, I said. We can't use it yet. We need Marcus on the stand. The day ended with the press swarming Marcus outside the courthouse. It's heartbreaking, I heard him tell a CNN reporter, to see my own daughter so full of hate, but I forgive her. I just want justice for Mom. I walked to my car alone. Someone spat on my windshield. A note was tucked under the wiper. Shame on you. I sat in the driver's seat and screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw. Then I looked at the passenger seat. The black binder was there. The silver watch. Don't waste time waiting. I wiped my face. I wasn't going to scream anymore. Tomorrow, it was my turn. Tomorrow, the predator became the prey. Day 2. The defense's turn. I took the stand. I was wearing Grandma's favorite pearl necklace. It felt like armor. Amy Richards came at me like a pit bull. Ms. Vance, isn't it true you are in debt? No, I said calmly. Isn't it true your business is failing? My business is profitable, or it was until my father went on television and lied about me. Objection, Richards shouted. Sustained, Thorne sighed. Ms. Vance, answer yes or no. Ms. Vance, Richards leaned in, smiling cruelly. Did you feel resentful that your father was a successful, famous man while you were just a gardener? I am a landscape architect, I corrected. And no, I didn't feel resentment. I felt pity. The courtroom went quiet. Marcus's head snapped up. Pity, Richards laughed. For a senator. Yes, I said, looking directly at Marcus, because he was so busy chasing applause from strangers that he missed the chance to be loved by the only person who mattered. His mother. Marcus's face turned red.
He whispered something to his lawyer. No more questions, Richards snapped. Then it was time. Ben stood up. The defense calls Marcus Vance to the stand. Marcus buttoned his jacket and walked to the stand. He looked confident. He thought he had already won. He smiled at the judge. The judge smiled back. Ben started slow. He asked about the campaign, the schedule. Marcus answered with rehearsed charm. Then Ben shifted gears. Senator, you claim you loved your mother dearly.
I sat in the airport terminal crying, wishing I could be with her.
You were crying in O'Hare Airport?
Yes, alone.
You didn't speak to anyone?
No, I was too upset. Ben walked back to the table and picked up a piece of paper. Senator, are you aware that flight records show no storms in Chicago on May 12th? Marcus didn't blink. It must have been a mechanical issue then. It was a long time ago. I see, Ben said. And you didn't speak to Judge Thorne that day? The air in the room changed. Judge Thorne stiffened on the bench. I might have called him for legal advice, Marcus said, his eyes darting to the judge. Legal advice? Ben asked. About what? About how to seize your mother's assets before she died? Objection, Richard screamed. Preposterous.
Sustained, Thorne roared. Mr. Sterling, you are treading on thin ice. Ben ignored the judge. He looked Marcus in the eye. Senator, let me ask you directly. Did you ever refer to your mother as a hag? Did you ever tell anyone that you had a judge in your pocket? Marcus laughed, a loud, arrogant laugh. Absolutely not. That is offensive. I loved my mother, and I have the utmost respect for the judiciary. I would never say such things. So, Ben pressed, if there were a recording of you saying those things, it would be fake. It would be a complete fabrication, Marcus sneered. A lie, just like everything else my daughter has produced. Then turned to the judge. Your Honor, the witness has just denied specific statements under oath. I move to introduce Defense Exhibit 4B for impeachment purposes. It is a recording of the conversation the senator just claimed never happened. Judge Thorne's face went pale. He knew. He knew exactly what conversation that was. Objection, Richards yelled. Privacy violation. Digital hearsay. Thorne looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Thorne. There was a silent communication between them. Panic. The objection is, Thorne started to say sustained. I stood up. I couldn't help it. If you suppress this, I said, my voice cutting through the room, clear and cold. I have already set up a dead man switch. If I don't walk out of here with a fair verdict, that recording goes to the FBI, the Ethics Committee, and the New York Times in 1 hour. Order. Thorne banged his gavel so hard the handle cracked. Sit down. Play the tape, Your Honor, Ben said calmly, unless you have a reason to be afraid of what's on it. Thorne was trapped. If he blocked it now after I made that threat, he looked complicit. If he played it, he was dead. He looked at Marcus with pure hatred. You got me into this. I will allow a 30-second clip, Thorne croaked, his voice barely a whisper, to test for authenticity. Ben looked at me. I nodded. Play it, I mouthed. The silence in that courtroom was heavy, almost physical. It pressed against my eardrums. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the scratch of a reporter's pen, and the shallow, rapid breathing of my father, Senator Marcus Vance. 30 seconds. That was all Judge Thorne had granted us. 30 seconds to undo 30 years of lies. Ben Sterling's finger hovered over the spacebar of his laptop. He looked at me one last time. It wasn't a look of reassurance. It was a look of shared combat.
We were about to detonate a bomb in a crowded room, and we both knew there would be no going back. "Proceed," Judge Thorne whispered. His voice was tight, strained. He was gripping the gavel so hard his knuckles were white. He knew. Deep down, he knew he had made a mistake letting this go this far, but my threat to go to the FBI had cornered him. Ben pressed the key. Static hissed through the courtroom speakers. It was loud, jarring. Then a voice cut through the noise. It wasn't the polished baritone voice of the senator used for TV spots.
"She's a useless old bat, James. I swear she's holding on to life just to spite me." The courtroom gasped, a collective intake of breath that sucked the air out of the room. I watched the jury box. Technically, this was a bench trial, but the court staff and the few onlookers were reacting like a jury. Their eyes went wide. "Patience, Marcus. Just make sure the will is flexible. We need that liquidity for the appointment. If I don't get that federal seat, my creditors are going to start asking questions about those land deals." I looked at Judge Thorne. The color didn't just drain from his face, it vanished. He looked like a wax figure melting under a heat lamp. His mouth opened, but no sound came out.
"Don't worry. The daughter, Fiona, she's a prop. She's good for family photos. That's it. Voters eat that up. But in reality, Claire's just a prop. When she dies, I'll fix it. I've got friends in the right places, judges who owe me favors. I'll get the money back where it belongs, in my pocket and then in yours." Good, because if she fights it, she won't. She's weak. She still thinks I love her. It's pathetic, really. I'll strip her of everything, claim she's crazy, and lock her out. She'll be lucky if I leave her a cardboard box. Ben hit the spacebar. The audio cut off with a sharp click. The silence returned, but this time it was different. It wasn't heavy. It was electric. It was the silence of a predator realizing the cage door has just swung shut. Marcus was frozen on the witness stand. His hand was half raised, as if he had been about to object, but he had forgotten how to move. His eyes were darting around the room, looking for an exit, looking for an ally, looking for anything other than the hundreds of eyes now staring at him with a mixture of horror and disgust. Judge Thorne looked like he was having a cardiac event. He slumped back in his high leather chair, his robe suddenly looking too big for him. "That," Marcus finally stammered. His voice was high, cracking. "That is AI. That is a deepfake. Technology these days, anyone can fake a voice." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "She made it. She hired someone. It's a fraud." I stood up. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't wait for Ben. I walked around the defense table and stood in the center of the aisle, facing my father. "It's not AI, Marcus," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "Because I have the metadata. I have the server logs from your own private archive. Elias gave me everything." At the mention of Elias, Marcus flinched as if I had slapped him. He knew. He realized in that second that his arrogance, his decision to fire a loyal aide to protect his useless son, had been his undoing. "You," Marcus whispered. "You ungrateful little." "And," I continued, turning to the judge, whose eyes were bulging, "I think the ethics committee will be very interested to hear your voice on that tape, Your Honor." "Discussing land deals and federal appointments? That sounds an awful lot like conspiracy to commit fraud." "Bailiff!" Judge Thorne screeched. He sounded like a cornered rat. "Clear the court! Clear the court immediately! This is a mistrial! I declare a mistrial!" "Sit down," Ben Sterling roared. It was the first time I had ever heard the old lawyer yell. "You don't get to clear the court, James. You are a material witness to a crime now. You are not the judge anymore." The gallery exploded. Reporters were shouting questions. Cameras were flashing, despite the no photography rule. The bailiff, a burly man who had looked bored for 2 days, looked from the judge to Marcus to me, uncertain of what to do. But I wasn't looking at the chaos. I was looking at my father. He had slumped forward, his head in his hands. The confident senator, the man who demanded the world bow to him, was gone. In his place was a small, broken man who had gambled his family for power and lost both.
And for the first time in my life, looking at him didn't hurt. It didn't make me want to cry. It didn't make me want to beg for his affection. I felt light. I looked at the silver watch on my wrist. Time is the only thing you can't win back. I hadn't won back the years he stole from me, but I had stopped him from stealing a single second more. Before I tell you what happened next, before the handcuffs and the headlines, I want to say something to everyone watching right now. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my story up to this point. I know it's heavy.
I know some of you have dealt with family like this, people who mistake your kindness for weakness. You are the reason I'm telling this. You are the reason I fought. If you are still here, if you are still standing with me in this courtroom, please do me a favor. Hit that like button and comment the number 1 below. Let me see a stream of ones in the comments. Let me know that I wasn't alone in that room. Your support is the invisible army that kept me standing. Comment 1 now, and let's finish this. The chaos in the courtroom was a living thing. It was a beautiful, terrifying storm. Judge Thorne was trying to bang his gavel, but his hand was shaking so badly he missed the block and hit the wood of the bench. Whack. Whack. It sounded like a desperate heartbeat.
"I said clear the court," Thorne screamed again. "This evidence is inadmissible. It was obtained illegally." "Actually," a voice came from the back of the room. Everyone turned. A woman in a sharp gray suit was standing near the doors. She had been sitting there quietly for the last hour, unnoticed. She walked forward, flashing a badge. "Special Agent Miller, FBI," she announced. The room went deathly silent. "We've been monitoring Senator Vance's offshore transactions for 6 months," Agent Miller said, walking calmly down the aisle. "But we needed a link to the domestic accounts. Thank you, Miss Vance, for providing the bridge." She looked at Judge Thorne. "Your Honor, I suggest you step down from the bench. We have a warrant for your phone and your financial records."
Thorne collapsed back into his chair. He looked small. He looked like a child caught stealing candy, only the candy was millions of dollars, and the punishment was federal prison. Then the focus shifted to the witness stand. Marcus Vance was trying to stand up. He looked disoriented. "This is a setup," he mumbled, tugging at his tie as if it were choking him. "This is a political hit job. I am a senator. You can't touch me." "Marcus," I said, stepping closer to the railing. "It's over." He looked at me. His eyes were wild, bloodshot. And in that moment, the mask fell away completely. There was no charm left, no fatherly pretense, just pure, unadulterated venom. "You stupid girl," he hissed, loud enough for the microphone to catch. "You think you won? You think you're smart. You're nothing. You're just the help. I should have left you in that orphanage when your mother died instead of taking you in." Gasps rippled through the room. My mother hadn't died. She had left him when I was 2 because he beat her. He had spun a story about her dying in a car crash to garner sympathy votes during his first council run. He had just admitted, on record, to another lie that had been the foundation of our family history. "I know Mom didn't die, Marbus," I said softly. "I found her letters in Grandma's safe deposit box, the ones you hid, the ones where she begged to see me, and you threatened to have her arrested if she came near the state." Marcus recoiled. You found them?" "I found everything," I said. "Grandma kept everything. She knew what you were. She was just waiting for me to be strong enough to see it too." Marcus looked at his lawyer, Amy Richards. She was packing her briefcase. "Amy?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Do something." Amy Richards looked at him with cold, professional detachment. "I'm withdrawing as counsel, Mr. Vance. I can't represent a client who perjures himself on the stand. You're on your own." She walked out. Marcus was alone, truly alone. Julian, my brother, who had been sitting in the front row, tried to sneak out. He had pulled his jacket over his head like a celebrity dodging paparazzi. "Sit down, Julian," I shouted. He froze. "You're part of this too," I said.
The gambling debts? The funds stolen from the campaign to pay your bookies? Elias told me everything. You're not the victim here.
You're the reason he was desperate enough to rob Grandma." Julian started to cry. Not the fake tears from earlier. Ugly, terrified sobbing.
"I didn't mean to. He told me he'd fix it. Dad said he'd fix it."
"Dad can't fix anything anymore," I said. Agent Miller signaled to 2 officers standing by the door. They moved toward the witness stand. "Senator Vance," the agent said, "please place your hands behind your back."
"No!"
Marcus screamed. He clung to the railing of the witness box.
"I am a senator. You can't arrest me in a court of law. This is my courtroom."
It took 2 officers to pry his fingers off the wood. As they cuffed him, he kept screaming. He wasn't screaming about justice. He was screaming about his image. "Don't let them take pictures. No cameras. Turn off the cameras." I watched as they dragged him down the aisle. As he passed me, he stopped fighting for a second. He looked me right in the eyes. "I made you," he spat. I looked back at him, my face completely dry. "No, Marcus, you broke me." I put myself back together. They hauled him out the double doors. The heavy thud of the doors closing felt like the final period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. I turned back to the bench. Judge Thorne was shaking, trying to drink water from a glass that clattered against his teeth. "Miss Vance," he stammered, I am going to recuse myself. I will transfer this case to Judge Holloway immediately."
"You do that," I said, "and get a good lawyer, James. You're going to need one." The next hour was a blur of flashing lights and shouting reporters. When I walked out of the courthouse, it was like stepping into a strobe light. Microphones were shoved in my face. Fiona, did you know about the FBI investigation? Is it true your father stole from the campaign? How do you feel about sending your own father to prison?" Ben Sterling stood next to me, acting as a human shield. "Ms. Vance has no comment at this time. The evidence speaks for itself." But I stopped him. I looked at the sea of cameras. This was the machine Marcus had built. This was the monster he fed. And now I was going to starve it. "I have one comment," I said into the bank of microphones.
The crowd went quiet. "My grandmother, Martha Vance, was a woman of integrity," I said, my voice steady. "She built this family's legacy with hard work and honesty. Today, that legacy was protected. To anyone out there who is being bullied by someone in power, someone who thinks they are untouchable, remember this. The truth is quiet. Lies are loud. But eventually, the truth is the only thing left standing." I walked through the crowd, got into my beat-up Honda Civic, not a limo, not a luxury SUV, and drove away. I didn't go home. I drove to the cemetery. The rain had stopped. The sun was setting, casting long, golden shadows across the grass. I walked to Grandma's grave. The dirt was still fresh. I sat down on the grass next to the headstone. I didn't cry. I felt a profound sense of exhaustion, the kind that settles into your bones after a marathon. "I did it, Grandma," I whispered. "I used the receipts." I took the silver watch out of my pocket and laid it on the stone. "Don't waste time waiting." "I'm not waiting anymore," I told her. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Julian. "Fi, please. They froze my accounts. I can't pay my rent. I have nowhere to go. Dad is in holding. Elena left him already. I'm scared. Can I crash at your place? Just for a few days?" I looked at the message. A part of me, the old Fiona, the provider, the doormat, wanted to say yes. He was my brother. He was pathetic and useless, but he was blood. Then I remembered the text he sent during the funeral. Did Grandma leave the vintage Jaguar? I remembered him laughing while I changed Grandma's sheets. I typed a reply. "No. You are an able-bodied 28-year-old man. Get a job. Do not contact me again." I hit block. It felt cold, but it was a clean cold, like winter air that kills the bacteria. I sat there for a long time.
The sun dipped below the horizon. Suddenly, I heard footsteps. I tensed, thinking it might be a reporter who followed me. It was Elias. He was holding a bouquet of cheap daisies. He looked awkward, standing there in his hoodie. "I saw the news," he said. "They denied his bail. Flight risk." "Good," I said. "Thank you," Elias said, looking at his shoes, "for doing what I was too cowardly to do." "You gave me the gun, Elias," I said. "I just pulled the trigger." He nodded. "What will you do now? With the money? The house?" "Burn it down," I said. Elias's eyes went wide. I laughed, a real laugh. Metaphorically. "I'm going to sell the mansion. It's too big. And it smells like Marcus's cologne. I'm going to use the money to fix the things he broke." "He broke a lot of things," Elias said. "Then I better get to work." 3 months later. I was standing in the middle of what used to be a vacant, trash-filled lot in the worst part of the city. Now it was a garden. The Martha Vance Community Center and Garden. The sign was freshly painted. There were kids running around the playground. There were elderly people sitting on benches, playing chess. There were rows of vegetables growing, tomatoes, peppers, squash. I used the inheritance. All of it. Well, not all of it. I kept enough to pay off my own mortgage and ensure my landscape architecture firm was stable. But the rest, the millions Marcus had tried to steal, I poured it into this. I walked over to a bench where an old woman was knitting. She reminded me a little of Grandma. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" she asked. "It is," I smiled. I checked my phone. The news feed was still buzzing with the Vance scandal. Senator Marcus Vance sentenced to 15 years for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Disgraced Judge James Thorne takes plea deal, disbarred permanently. Julian Vance spotted working at a car wash in Jersey City. I felt a twinge of satisfaction reading about Julian. It wasn't malice. It was just justice. He was finally learning the value of $1. Maybe it would make a man out of him eventually. As for Marcus, I hadn't visited him. I never would. He sent me letters from prison. I burned them, unopened. I didn't need to know his excuses. I didn't need his apologies. I had reclaimed my narrative. I wasn't the ungrateful daughter. I wasn't the manipulator. I wasn't the provider for ungrateful parasites. I was Fiona. Just Fiona. I looked down at my hands. They were dirty with soil. I had been planting hydrangeas all morning. Grandma loved hydrangeas. Ben Sterling walked through the gate. He was wearing a Hawaiian shirt, looking ridiculous and happy. He had retired after the trial. "Hey, kid," he called out. "Place looks good." "Thanks, Ben."
"Enjoying retirement?" "Fishing is boring," he grumbled. "I miss yelling at judges." He handed me a coffee. "You okay? Today is the day the sale of the mansion finalizes." "I'm fine," I said. "Better than fine. I feel light." "You should," Ben said. "You took down a titan." "He wasn't a titan, Ben," I said, looking at the kids playing on the slide. "He was just a bully with a checkbook. We give people power because we're afraid of them. Once you stop being afraid, you realize how small they really are." Ben nodded. "Smart girl. Your grandma would be proud." "I know," I said, and for the first time I truly believed it. I didn't need Marcus to tell me he was proud. I was proud of myself. I walked back to the garden bed. The sun was warm on my back. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the smell of wet earth and flowers. It was the smell of life. I thought about the Brielle I was in the courtroom that first day, trembling, scared, desperate for validation. She seemed like a stranger now. I picked up my trowel and dug into the earth. There was work to do. There were seeds to plant. And for the first time in my life, the harvest would be mine to keep. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to my story. I know it was a long journey, from the hospice room to the courtroom, but we made it. And please, click on the next video on the screen to hear another story of justice served. You won't want to miss it. I'm Fiona, and thank you for being my witness.